What do you do when your dataset uses some abbreviated form of date, or doesn't use the word date at all? Maybe there's a date field called something like holiday, vacation start, and vacation end, or PTO. Here's a dataset that uses DAT, DT, and other words for the date columns. I've thrown in a few dummy fields of strings to make sure we avoid transforming those to the short date format. I've copied our data over to a few sheets and pasted as values. We're going to use an array to hold all the possible date names. Then we will check each header against each item in the array, and if there's a match, we will change the format of the column. And again, starting with our fixed dates macro, we will rename this to fixed dates complex. We're going to keep our lcall and colnum variables. For our new variables, we will need a string for the header value, a variable for the array which we will set to a variant, a Boolean variable to check if the header is in the array, and a long variable for looping through the array. We need to define the values of our header array, which will be all of the column headers without the dummy strings. To do this, we need to copy the headers and put them inside double quotes and separate them with a comma. I've done this on the side to spare you from having to watch me type all that out. In another video, I will show you a macro that can take a list of items and create this string. We will keep our for loop that goes through the headers on the worksheet, and the action we want if we find the header in the array. At the beginning of our for loop, we want to initialize our Boolean variable to false, because each time we search for our header, we want to reset isInArray. Otherwise, the first date it finds it will remain true and change all the columns after that to a short date, including all our dummy strings. Next, we need to bring in our header value. Now we will create another loop to go through the values in the array. L-bound, which is the first item in the array, to U-bound, which is the last item in the array. Using an if statement, we can determine if the header variable has a match in the items from our array. Then the isInArray will become true, and we will exit the for loop. This way we don't waste time comparing each header once we have a match. And I'm just going to tab these over to make sure that it's blocked properly. So now we're going to end our if statement and close our loop. So what do we want to do if isInArray is true? We will wrap our format change in an if statement using that variable. I'm going to hit reset, save, and run. And when we go back into Excel, we can see that the dates have been changed. Notice that several of our headers have common elements for date. Here we have the word date, and these two have the truncated DAT. We're going to go to a new sheet of data. We could take out all of these headers and simply have it look for the letters DAT. For this, we can't use the asterisk in the array list or the like keyword in our loop. So we'll comment out our if statement and start a new one. We will use a handy Microsoft function called instr, which stands for instr. When we hover over it, we can see what parameters it takes. Start is optional and can be used to start the comparison at a given location. We won't need this. The first string is the string we are looking for, our header value. The second string is the string we're looking in, the array. The last parameter is a compare, which is optional, and it specifies the type of string comparison, but we won't be needing this either. An added bonus to using the instr function is that it also works when someone adds white space at the beginning or the end of the header value. So we run this and we see all of our values have been changed. Our comparison is case sensitive. Up until now, we were comparing strings that were all lowercase. What do you do when the data has random capital letters or uses camel case? We'll add a few capital letters to this data set. For this, we will wrap our header in an Lcase function, which will drop everything to the lower case before checking it against the strings in the array. It won't change the header in the data set, it will only change the variable that is temporarily being held. So we hit reset, save, and run, and it looks good. There's one more thing we can consider for this data set. What do you do when someone puts spaces between the words, or adds an underscore or a dash? As I mentioned in the introduction, there will be extra assignments for you to work out on your own. I will put this challenge on GitHub along with my solution. I'll give you a hint. Microsoft's replace function is a good way to start.